Good afternoon. I am Engineer Vimanasena Gamage, former past president of IESL session 2015 and 16, as well as former director of irrigation in the head office, and now retired. I am product of the Peradeniya University Engineer faculty, and presently I am working as a freelance consultant engineer for the construction sector, as well as a registered arbitrator and adjudicator. Especially for your B paper, I am going to share with some my experience and thought and knowledge about the environment. So, environment management, it broadly defined in everywhere, most of the textbooks and the acts and ordinance. Now, it consists of all the external, non-living, abiotic, and living biotic factors, conditions, and influence that affect the life, development, and survival of an organism or community. Then, in our government is already take the action about the National Environment Act. Its section 33 define the environment as the physical factors of the surrounding of human being, including the land, soil, water, atmosphere, climate, odors, taste, and biological factors of animals and plants of every description. So now I will come to the description of interdependence, environmental change, and resilience. Environment is complex system of living and non-living components which interact with each other and respond to change in order of to survival. So, the environment is dynamic and constantly changing. So, very important. Environment is, as you know, dynamic and constantly changing. Change occurs as a result of natural process as well as through human intervention and action. So that is the most important. Then environment change as a result of the natural and human made causes can occur over a short period. Short period volcanoes and longer period for a short period volcanoes, longer period climate change. That is the one I want to explain to you. So the environment it could also refer to the geological region, a certain climate conditions, pollutant or the noise which surround the organism. This can be narrowed down to describe specific areas such as the aquatic environment, for example, consists of rivers, lakes, and oceans, and the terrestrial environment is made up to the land surface. So, the term built environment has been applied in various places in areas such as cities created by human activity. All components of the environment are intimately linked and the combination constitute the earth and atmospheric system. They vary in scale from atmospheric to global and may be subdivided according to the attributes. So, environment changes as a result of natural and human-made cause can occur over a short period. That's the main point. With that, it is necessary to make the management. So, short period, something like volcanoes, as well as over a longer period, as the case of climate change, long-term process can be as damaging. or in some cases even more damaging than those that occur over a short period of time. In the case of human-introduced environmental changes, which often occurs in the long term, there is a time lapse between the cause and the effect, which hides the contribution of the humankind or this process or adverse change. For example, it was only decades after CPC, chloro, as in most of you are aware about CFCs, chlorofluorinated carbons, were product and the use that is impact on the ozone layer was discovered. So that is the long-term effect. Then we will come to the definition of resilience. The resilience allows the Earth to withstand change, and in many cases restoration occurs naturally over a period of time. In cases where the damages is too much to naturally restore, the environment evolves a change into different environment. Even evaluation has meant that different plant and animal species survive and have adapted over a period of time to live in various climatic conditions, including extreme environments such as ice and desert. So, deserts. The resilience in evaluation has meant that different plant and animal species survive and adapt over a period of time to live in the various climatic conditions. I think you understand that. Then including extreme environments such as ice and deserts. However, rapid and unnatural changes often means that many environmental and the animal and plant species that live within them are unable to cope with the change and lost as a result. So we will discuss and we will find out the importance of the conserving the environment. Why we should conserve the environment. So our environment is a fundamental to our survival. It provides us with various goods and services that support, provide and regulate our well-being. So we rely on the environment for our lives and will continue to do so in the future because we want oxygen, we want foods and other necessities. Therefore, we always rely on the environment for our lives. We'll continue to do so in the future also. As a human being in built-up cities and towns, the interconnectivity and functioning of environment is is not is not obvious. When humans create an artificial environment, it is felt that the rest of the environment is something that is separate from us. So that is the most important. When the human create the artificial environment, it is felt that the rest of the environment is something that is separate from us, not the homogeneous. So irrespective of where a person lives, in forest or in a city, we all have the same basic needs such as air, water and food. That is the most important. When human create art, so the difference is that some of these needs are now packaged differently and are sourced from the far away, which make it difficult for us to understand the environmental source. For example, when we drink water, off a bottle or mineral water, it is easy to forget the role played by the water cycle or watershed forest in the providing us in the clean drinking water. We forget that if we excessively mine sand from the river, we might be forced to drink saline water, like the coastal belts, Kalutara area, Kalani River, yeah, contaminated saline water. If we clear watershed forest, leading to soil erosion. We forget that the reservoir downstream will lose some of its capacity to provide hydroelectrical power as well as irrigation and drinking. We are often unconscious the importance of the and interconnected of our environment. That is the main mistake. Therefore, many carry out activities that pollute and degrade without realizing the in, repercussions. What is the important that we cannot survive healthy with any air, water and food. What we really need is clean air, clean water as well as food without contaminants. Our environment provides us for more than one basic requirement. It provides various goods such as food, fuel, building material, and services such as erosion control, sediment retention, climate regulation, uh, waste treatment, water supply, and recreation. In order to provide us with these environmental goods and services, the environment interacts with various living and non-living components through a complex series of relationships and processes. These ecosystem goods and services are usually referred to as ecosystem service. I think you can read little more, and then we are going to just touch environmental degradation and pollution. Environmental degradation refers to the depletion of potentially renewable resources such as air, water, soil, forest, or world wildlife by using it at a faster rate than it can be naturally renewed. That is the thing. So everything we very quickly we can use, but to renew that it will take some time. Environmental destruction has serious as far-reaching consequences, and these impacts on both human and the environment may not be immediately obvious. Many different forces contribute to environment degradation. Even a small or located act of environment degradation impact the natural and built environment, thereby affecting people. Such degradation affects the goods and services we rely on, and this cost is borne by other people, by the government or wider society, and by the future generation. Many different forces contribute to environment degradation. What are that? These include direct destruction by the people and businessmen, while wider institutional, policy, and legal factors also contribute to degradation. In addition, weak enforcement of environmental laws, most important, coupled with the failure of relevant agencies, those who are custodian agencies, to perform their duty. Therefore, the widespread corruption and political patronage shows and encourage misuse of the environment, and the breaking of environmental laws, changing consumption pattern and demand, increasing market integration and globalization, land pressure and population growth all have an impact on environment. Therefore, global and national pressures often encourage development to take place in ways that are unsustainable both in environmental and economic terms. Environmental degradation and pollution continue as such. These include, so for your easy reference, direct destruction by peoples and business as I mentioned earlier, while wider institutional, policy and legal factors as well as such as weak enforcement of environmental law as we experience nowadays, coupled with failure to relevant agencies to perform their duties, always people and public general public agitate in that, exacerbable degradation, widespread corruption, and political patronage allows encourage misuse the environment, breaking the environment law. So as we experience these days, changing consumption pattern and demand increases the market integration and globalization. I think we'll understand. Land pressure and population growth all have an impact on environment. For settlement, lands are using, then land will be amount of land will be degraded. So those things are very badly affecting the environment. Global and national pressures often encourage the development to take place that are unsustainable both environmental and economic terms. So development strategies has to be considered with them. So in this regard, regarding the management of the environment, there are few things are already introduced by the laws as well as the general public. The public trust doctrine. So it is most important. These are two conception of public trust doctrine. According to the narrow concept, the government deemed to be the trustee of the country natural resources and its surrounding environment, and such resources must be held by used by the government for the benefit of the people. So government is the most important institution to protect the environment. So the public trust doctrine entrusted the government to look after the environment. So protect the environment. So that is the for a long time it was in the field of environment that public trust doctrine in environment law we always discuss. So according to the narrow concept government deemed to be the trustee of the country's natural resources and its surrounding environment, and such resources must be held or used by the government for the benefit of the people. So even though this government is the custodian for the resources, so then it has to be protect for the use of development of the people as well as must keep the protect it for the future generation. So then it is a short term. In the wider environmental sense, the concept of public trust expresses the ideas that the present generation hold the natural resources in trust for the future generation. So we are the අපි තමයි බාරකරුවෝ වර්තමානයේදී natural resources වල to protect it for the future generation also. අපිට ඕන ප්‍රමාණය පාවිච්චි කරලා වැඩිපුර පාවිච්චි නොකර අනාගත පරපුර වෙනුවෙන් වෙන් කර දීම තමයි wider environmental sense. It is the concept of public trust. So this public trust is very important. So in all the countries it is using normally it is in the environmental law, it is their public trust. So I think as engineers we must keep in the mind that it is public trustee. Then environment challenges. The state of the environment challenges in Sri Lanka are the air pollution, water and water resource pollution. I think air pollution very clearly understand all of you, and water resource pollution. So here always in the general public is agitating for the water. So that is most important. Water prevent the water pollution and water resources pollution also, rivers as well as reservoirs. Then the soil pollution and noise pollution, mineral extraction, land degradation and energy. I think you understand that is that soil pollution. Once the soil is polluted, we contaminating the hazardous matters, so it cannot be used for development of the human being. Then the waste, solid waste, toxic and hazardous waste, e-waste, disaster, biodiversity and the protected area. So these are the final effects because of the environment pollution, marine and coastal environmental. So I think in recent incidents in our sea, this is very descriptive marine and coastal environment. So therefore, everywhere this coastal environment as marine as well as other water or everything is the environmental challenges. So those challenges has to be managed for the certain extent for the our future. Then environment laws, it is described polluter pay principle. So I think very understand polluter pay principle. So pollution control costs have been borne by the public rather than those who polluted. So normally when the pollution is occurred, it is public funds are uh, using for clear the polluted material. So therefore, is earlier it was the polluter pay principle. According to that, historically pollution control cost has been borne by the people rather than those who pollute. This can be demonstrated by way of a simple illustration. I think we are very familiar day-to-day life with that. In industry, discharge pollutant into river. These are at least those possible ways in which the public may bear the economic cost of such pollution. The river can remain polluted and unsuitable for certain downstream activities as well as causing those downstream that utilize the river to suffer economic losses. That is the final result. Those who utilize the water in the river downstream can build a suitable water treatment and purification plant at their own cost. One example. The polluter may receive subsidies from the government for controlling the pollution he or she causes. That is, the polluter may receive subsidies from the government for controlling and pollution to be caused. So, in the each of the foregoing situation, the affected members of the public bear the cost of the pollution and the necessary measures to be eliminate or mitigate its effects. The polluter pays principle, on the other hand, established that the cost of the pollution should be borne by the person responsible for causing the pollution, and therefore the polluter pay principle seek to avoid these results as well as the injustice caused by it. By obliging the polluter to bear the cost of pollution control, internationalized such costs. The polluter pay principle is therefore a method of internalizing the extreme least. So that is the most important. The international instrument is the first express referred to the polluter pays principle was 1972 Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Council recommendation on the guiding principle concerning the international economic aspects of environmental pollution. The principle of preventive action, also important, impose the obligation to state to prevent damages to the environment and the reduce limit of control activities which may cause risk of damage to the environment. A state may implement this obligation through the regulatory, administrative and other such measures. The preventive principle is best supported by the domestic environment protection legislation, which should be established authorities, procedure, and process for implementation this principle. Such legislation should ideally integrate internationally environmental standards, provide access to the environmental information to the public, and ensure environmental impact assessment with necessary. Prevention is also linked to the notion of the deterrence and the idea that this, this, this incentives such as penalties and civil liability will cause persons to take greater care in the behavior, avoid the pollutant activities. In addition, notion of pollution prevention include the concept of pollution may be prevented or reduced its source by changing the material, production technique and technology. For example, a person engaged in the clean development of mechanism project in Sri Lanka may apply for an secure carbon credits or certified emission reduction under the Clean Development Mechanism introduced by the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change as contained in the defined in the Kyoto Protocol. So that's something. So in which case the Sri Lankan government has introduced important laws and ordinance in Sri Lanka and institutions. So few important laws and institutions in Sri Lanka list out very few. National Environment Act number 47, 1980 and 58 implemented by Central Environment Authority. Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance implemented by the Department of Wildlife. Forest Ordinance number 16, 1907, very old ordinance. It was implementing by the Forest Department. Mahawali Authority Act, which is responsible to Mahawali Authority to implement it. State Land Ordinance, a Land Commissioner and this is Secretary. Mines and Mineral Act number 33, and then Mineral Corporation and Irrigation Ordinance by Irrigation Department. Coast Conservation Act, Coast Conservation Department, and Marine Pollution Prevention Act 35 2008, Coastal Conservation Department. Very recently it was implemented. During the our discussion about the environmental management, I think we have to discuss about the sustainable development. So it is a well recognized principle about the sustainable development. What is the sustainable development? I think most of you are much aware about sustainable development because in other lectures also maybe discuss these things. So as a definition for sustainable development, it defines sustainable development as the development that meets the need of present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. I think you have to keep in mind when you write your answers what is this sustainable development. So this definition is very important and wording also you have to keep with that in your mind. So to write the what is the sustainable development. So sustainable development has emerged as a new paradigm of development, integrating economic growth, social development, and environmental protection, as well as independent and mutually supportive element of long-term development. So, So that is the importance of the development. When you discuss the what to call this environmental sustainability, right? So the management that sustainable development plays the major role. So that's what it is very important. So at the mainly actually we only have to consume the whatever we need, not the excessive amount, because uh, it is our duty to keep our resources for future generation also. The most widely used definition of sustainable development is one one coined by the World Commission of Environment and Development. It defines sustainable development as development, as I mentioned earlier, that meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So we have to use our resources for as what we want for them at the moment and keep the balance for the future generation. Sustainable development has emerged as a new paradigm of development in integrating economic growth, social development, and environmental protection as interdependent and mutually supportive elements of long-term development. So, actually, it emphasizes the particularly it emphasizes the participatory multi-stakeholder approach to development, policy making, development, and implementation, mobilizing public and private resources for development and making use of the knowledge, skills, and energy of all social groups concerned with the future of the planet and its people. So, sustainability is very much about what kind of legacy we want to leave for our children and grandchildren. So, that is the basic idea. The ideas of sustainability emerged in the 1970s with the UN Stockholm Conference on the Human Environment being the first major international meeting that considered how human activities were harming the environmental and were putting humankind at risk. So that's in 1967, as I mentioned the history, 87, the UN sponsored Brundtland Commission released Our Common Future, a report that captured widespread concern about the environment and poverty. So it points out that while economic development cannot stop, it must be changed course of to feel fit within the planet and recognize ecological limits. So we can't stop the development, but we have to make it to fit to the environmental protection also. The principle of sustainable development contains two concepts. One is the concept of needs, to particular the essential needs for the world poor to which overriding priority should be given. And second, the idea of the limitation of imposed by technology and the social organizations on the environmental ability to meet present and future needs. In 1972, the Conference of Environment and Development in the Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, brought together the heads of the state officials of 1969 government. In Rio, it was agreed that the protection of the environmental and social and economic development are fundamental to sustainable development. The Rio conference was significant milestone that set a new agenda for sustainable development. Further, in 2002, a follow-up conference was held in Johannesburg, South Africa, to reaffirm commitment to the Rio Principle. The full implementation of Agenda 21, which was the environment agenda for 20th century, and the program for the further implementation in Agenda 21. The summit resulted in the development of Johannesburg Plan and implementation, which focused on various topics, including poverty, eradication, change in unsustainable patterns of consumption and production, protecting and managing the natural resources based on economic and social development, and the link between human health and sustainable development. Therefore, the environmental and development must be viewed as being on the some side of the coin rather than being in the two sides of the coin. New technologies and innovations have already shown that development can occur with minimum impact on environment. Most important, renewable energy, green production and green building are just a few concepts which illustrate this. So, what I mentioned here, that all these things to as an approach to the environment management. So, further, the sustainable development reflected an international agreements preserving the natural resources for the benefit of future generation, also known as the principle of intergenerational equity. Then, exploiting natural resources in a manner which is sustainable, prudent, rational, wise and appropriate, also known as the principle of sustainable use. The equitable use of natural resources, which implies that use by one state must take into account the needs of other states, the principle of equitable use, ensuring the environment considerations are integrated into the economic and development plans, programs and perhaps and its development needs are taken into account in applying international objectives, environmental objectives, also known as the principle of integration. So, what I mentioned earlier is highly interrelated and is very important to manage environment management. Basically, environment management is to use the, we can't stop the development, use the whatever resources in minimum amount and protect the environment for long-term sustainability. Therefore, environment management is very important, and for that purpose, the government and states and as a general whole world make the arrangement how to manage the environment. So, then we are discussing, now we are going to approach the environment management. So, in this case, we have to answer the following questions. Very few I put it that. What exactly is environmental management? So, we have to understand what is exactly mean by the environmental management. Then, is it a single field or discipline? Right? Single field or discipline. Is it a process? You understand? And is it agreed approach? Is it agreed approach? Is it effort to identify and pursue goals? It is effort to identify and pursue the goals. Perhaps a philosophy. Is it environmental and development problem solving? This is actually source of the book Borrower in 2005. these questions has to be answered when you discuss what is environmental management. So we will try to define the environment management. Is a diverse set of activities. We understand what diverse set of activities. Environmental management is not easy to define, as Burrow has acknowledged. It can refer to a goal or vision, to attempt to steer a process, to the application of set of tools, to a philosophical exercise, seeking to establish new perspective towards the environmental and human societies, and to much more besides. So this is the, according to Burrow, the author, it is mentioned those things. Environment managers are diverse group. So environment managers. So for the environment management, there should be a managers. So managers are diverse group of people, including academics, right? Academics, then the policymakers and non-government organizations, NGO, most popular nowadays in the various countries, workers, company employees, civil servants, and wide range of individuals or groups, may be vulnerable, may be supportive groups, who make decisions about the use of natural resources such as fishers, farmers, and pastoralists. Indeed, environment management involves all people to some extent, because all human activities ultimately have some sort of environmental management is not easy to define. So what is we have to understand, the environment management is not the duty of the single person or group of people. It is the whole responsibility of the in general public, as well as the academics and other those who are responsible for that, and intellectuals. We all are stakeholders of the environment management. Then civil servants and wide range of individuals or groups who make decisions about the use of natural resources such as fishers, farms, and pastoralists. Indeed, environment management involves all people to some extent, because all human activities ultimately have some sort of environmental impact. So that is the thing. So civil servants who are highly educated as well as employed by the government for the various purpose, so they have uh, they have more responsibility, because they are the implementation of the whatever act and other ordinance in the field. So they have the very good responsibility in the respect of the environment management, because always environment impact is very effective to the all human activities, ultimately have some sort of impact that destroy our future generation prospects. So further, what are the environment desirable outcomes? What are the physical, economical, social, cultural, political, and technological constraints to achieving those outcomes? So this is the most day-to-day work. Day-to-day we are realizing that desirable outcomes are physical, economics, social, cultural, political, and technological constraints. Always constraints are there to achieving those outcomes. What are the most feasible options for achieving those outcomes? Indeed, in many parts of the world, and arguably worldwide, environment management is intimately linked with the pressing issues of justice and even of survival. A further definition might suggest that environment management is concerned with meeting and improving provisions for human needs and demands on sustainable basis with minimal damage to natural habitat and ecosystem. Thus, the concept of environment management is closely related to the another important and problematic concept, that is sustainable development. So environment management is always linked with the concept of sustainable development. So both are going parallel. So that is the most important. Then, however, some individuals are more directly involved with the resources use, and some special interest groups are particularly concerned with the resources exploitation and with issues related to pollution. So, sand mining, one of the example. So, this is a resource exploitation and with issue related to pollution. So, sand mine is basically our day-to-day life. So, sand mine is extensively taken place in the various places with the various support of political demands and other things. Then it is highly affected the pollution of the rivers as well as reservoirs. Then finally, the water scarcity and other polluted water problems will be top up. So management therefore involves in stakeholders and require multidisciplinary perspective. It involves many spatial scales ranging from local to the global. So management therefore involve very many stakeholders. Right? As I mentioned the stakeholders earlier, require multidisciplinary perspective. Right? And it involves many spatial scale. It is ranging from local to the global. So not only local area, globally it is affecting. It is also involves many diverse goals, including desires to control the direction and pace of development, to optimize resources use, to minimize environmental degradation, and to avoid environmental disaster. So that is the final final products environment disaster. So management may be practiced by individuals and groups holding conflicting and even directly opposing views, as may be case when the environment managers employed by the large multinational corporation come into conflict with the environment managers representing the voluntary organizations. So that is the thing, is that the management are practice individual groups of holding conflict, directly opposing views, as may be the case when environment managers employed by the large multinational corporation come into conflict with the environment managers representing the voluntary organization. Therefore, the voluntary organizations, those who are environment lovers and school children. So sometimes this in this respect of development, the large companies are employing the managers for their side. It is a conflict is normally arising with the environment lovers, those who are the managers representing the volunteer organization. So it is a very important focus on decision making. In general, however, environment management is concerned with the understanding of the structure and functions of the earth system, as well as the ways which humans relate to their environment. So every environment management concern, every people must understand the structure of the function for each earth system, as well as the human related their environment activities. The environment management is therefore concerned with the description and monitoring of environmental changes, with predicting future changes, and with attempts to maximize human benefits and the minimize environment degradation due to the human activities. So very important that environment management is concerned It is very descriptive description, monitoring the environmental changes, with predict future changes, and with attempt to maximize the human benefit, right, minimizing the environmental degradation. So people are maybe have enjoying the resources of the environment in the maximum way, but it should be minimize the environmental degradation due to human activities. Yet, characteristically, environment management is about decision making, and it is especially concerned with the process of decision making in relation to the use of natural resources, the pollution of habitat, and the modification of the ecosystems. So those are the things: resource pollution of habitat and the modification of ecosystem. So if it is a pollution is take place, then what we, sometimes it may be modified the ecosystem. So fundamentally, then environment management is a, as you know, by the day life as engineers, fundamentally then environment management is a political activity because those decisions about resources, pollution, and ecosystems are never neutral or other objective. On the contrary, they are value laden and they reflect the exercise power of particular groups over others. Moreover, in general, it is native to conceive of environment management as being about simply the management of the environment in the sense of human manipulating and controlling the components and process of the earth systems. So I think you understand that. So environment management is the importance. I will describe that. Of course, human do exert such influences on the earth system, but it is falsy of think that human manage, for instance, population of humpback whales. Instead, it is more accurate to suggest that human may be able to make some progress toward the managing human impacts on humpback whales. Right? So ultimately, then environment management is more concerned with the management of human activities and their impact than with the minimum management of the natural environment per se. So is the our duty, our activities has to be controlled and do wisely to manage the environment without any. So further influence in the course of development, nevertheless, some types of activities are common to environment managers. Some activities, type of activities are common to environment managers. Environment managers attempt to deliberately to steer the process of development in order to take advantage of opportunities. They attempt to ensure the critical environment limits are not exceeded. They work to reduce and mitigate environmental issues, and they are concerned with increasing the adaptability and resilience and human societies in the face of environment change, variability, unpredictability, and hazard. So, so from the point of view, environment management may be defined as the system that anticipates and avoids or solve environmental resources conservation issues. So therefore, the environmental management is always a systematic process anticipating and avoid and solve the environmental and resources conservation issues. From another point of view, environment management may be defined as a process concerned with human environmental interaction which seeks to identify. That is the most important. It is the process of concerned human environment interaction which is seek to identify. Then what are the environmental desirable outcomes? What are the physical, economical, social, and cultural and political and technological constraints to achieving these outcomes. What are the most feasible options for achieving those outcomes? What are the environment desirable outcomes? What are the physical, economic, social, cultural, political, and technological constraints to achieving those outcomes? What are the most feasible options to achieving those outcomes? We also so now we will discuss about the objectives of the environment management. So there are number of objectives I listed from the literature and textbooks. So first instance is identifying the environmental issues. So any development activities, before you commence the development activities, you have to identify the environment issues. Then finding the solution for environment issues. So when you identify the environment issues, find a solution for environment issues. Establishing the limits of the avoid overuse. So we have to establish limit to avoid the overuse. Help to renew natural resources. Minimize the use of natural resources. Then developing monitoring systems and research institutions. So example regarding the water sector. When we are going to construct the reservoir, right? So you have to build up the dam. And when the tank is filled with water, there is a natural resources are going under water. Therefore, at the very beginning, you have to find out what are the environmental issues will be raised during the construction due to the construction of the reservoir. So, how many lands will be inundated, and how many families are displaced, and how they are living standards, and how to achieve the same living standards somewhere else. Those problems has to be studied. The solutions, environmental issues are there, then the solution. Then establishing limits of our use. So then sometimes you may be able to what to call this construct very large tank, but you have to establish limits to avoid the overuse because the, the water collected water may be not for excessive amount, reasonable manner for your purpose for cultivation, for drinking. So very reasonable amount has to be stored. Then in the meantime we have to renew the natural resources as well as minimize the use of natural resources. So then developing monitoring system and research institution. So it's then the monitoring system has to be developed. Then the regeneration of degraded environment. So then during this period, during this reservoir construction, fertile lands may be going underwater. Therefore, this environment has to establish some else. So when the people settlement in the downstream, so same we have to do regeneration the degraded environment. Therefore, we have to now cut in the trees and various things will be involved. So therefore, in downstream, or somewhere, when the people are settling, the same environment has to be regenerated. The review the environmental goals of an organization. So, setting environmental targets to minimize the environmental impact of an organization. When they come to the organization, then control environment pollution, right? Then ensuring the environmental awareness program is being followed by the every employees for the company concerned. Ensuring the environment awareness program to be followed by every employee. So review the existing technologies and try to make them eco-friendly. So this is the example of if you have set up the factory or some factory, then maybe the this drinking uh, soft drinks factory, like something like Coca-Cola, or some you are manufacturing what to call it, some industry. So these things are involved. So we are using the some fairly amount of lands, and with that you are destroying the environment of existing point. So you have to do these things. The review existing technologies and try to make the eco-friendly. So every when you this is, introduce the industry or something, they review the existing technologies and try to make the eco-friendly. So your technologies should be eco-friendly. So you have to identify that. Make maximum utilization of the natural resources. So use the maximum use the natural resources. Understand. Assess the impact of potential activities on the environment. Encourage resources conservation program. So develop strategies for improving the quality of life. So when you are, for example, when you put up the industry in the BOI or somewhere else, so then it is disturbing the surrounding people existing quality of life. So therefore, develop the strategies for improving the quality of life of the people. Implement ways for environmental protection. So because for the environment you have to improve the waste, because the wastewater, polluted water, when you discharge for the nearby natural resources, you have to do the purification, and treated water and purified water has to be released to the natural resources. Minimize the impact of natural disaster. So it can be possible make a natural disaster because of groundwater pollution for the industry. So those has to be avoided. Then identify, develop, and implement policies related to sustainable development. Therefore, in your industry, this thing, your company must identify and develop the sustainable development policies. So because of you are using the natural resources and using the production, therefore those things have to be think about that, and you have to make the policies for the natural sustainability. Now we are going to discuss about management features of the environment. So even the construction site or even the manufacturing site, so we have the responsibility to management of the environment. Therefore, the following things has to be discussed. The concept of environment management act as a tool to improve the environmental performance. Therefore, it is our responsibility of the industry as a construction agency or as a company of doing some production. So concept of environment management as a tool to improve the environmental performance. So we have to always do our works according to environmental friendly manner. Therefore, environmental performance is the most important. It works toward the waste minimization. So one objective is to minimize the waste. Then systematic approach for overseeing the environmental affairs of the organization. So within the organization also there is a environmental affairs or systematic approach to maintain the environment. So when you are doing the construction of road or reservoir or something like that, when you are producing some item or marketable item, so it is the systematic approach you have to maintain within your organization or within the environment affairs. Address concern related to the environment through the evaluation of the related practice. So always you have to environment practices has to be evaluated throughout. So and we have to address the concern related to the environment through the evaluation of the related practice. encourage employees to undergo training to achieve the desired objectives. So the company has some environment protection policy. So we have to encourage all our employees to undergo the training to achieve this service, because without training we can't maintain the environmental management. Then helps determine the impact and objective of the product or service. So help to determine. So everybody has to impact of objective, a product or service. So product means if you are producing something, it is a product, and if you are providing service like road construction, reservoir, so then impact, it is very important to find, help to determine what is the impact of your service or product to the environment. Assign responsibilities and accountability in a firm. So we have to fix the responsibility and accountability in a firm for the various employees. So advantage. So we will discuss about the advantage of environment management. What is that our advantage of making environment management? One thing is effective use of resources. So with the environmental management, we have to effectively use the resources. So understand. So with the management, we are as a concept of sustainable development, minimum amount of material we are using, effective use of resources. Then the improve the sustainability, right? You understand. Help in staying out of troubles. So when you are doing the effective use of resources as improve the sustainability, it is always help to staying out of trouble. Without trouble, you can smoothly move your production or works or industry, something like that. Then it is mainly control the pollution control also. So then not the wastewater contaminating the natural groundwater and without purification. So always you have to control the pollution. So if you have taken the necessary precautions within your industry or company or work site, then pollution can be controlled. Then what is the other thing? Improve the public image. So publics are very vigilant. Actually, any product or any development is affecting the public, no? So public is always thinking what you are doing as a company or road project or reservoir development project or industry. So public is very vigilant about the work, how you are going to act. Therefore, when you are doing the systematic environment management, public may improve the public image. So then you are getting a minimum disturbance from the public. Then the economic progress. So it is you are progressing without waste and everything, with a waste of resources as well unwanted problems. Your economic will be progress. Then finance. So improved management efficiency. So management efficiency will be improved when you are doing the better job and with the environment friendly and better compliance. So there is a more, we are compliance in the better management, the marketing, then sales opportunities, empowered employee. So you have to give the more powers to the employees. Then they will be dedicatedly work for you, and certificate of recognized standards. So those are the things. Then that is the advantages. Then what is the disadvantage of environment management? So what is disadvantage? So first instance, it is the cost involved. The cost of developing, monitoring and implementing the effective environment management policies is high. It becomes difficult for every business entity to implement such program in its business plan because of the high cost. So it is understand. So when you are doing environment management in proper manner, right, it will involve some cost. So always you have to, your company or construction company industry, so you have to because with the high cost you have to do the environment management. That's what I put it, that the cost of developing, monitoring, implementing effective environment management policies is high. It becomes difficult for every business entity to implement such program in its business plan because of the high cost. So it is a separate cost when you do the construction site. So you have to employ the employment what you call it, environment managers, right? So then given the awareness and necessary support and everything, it is high cost. Then too much of trouble. So the environment management system can prove too much of a trouble. If you are a startup or small business entity who may limited resources and its disposal, therefore it is too much of trouble. So time and resources. The objective of implementing the environment management policies is to minimize energy and unnecessary resources consumption and reduce waste. It is a bitter fact that every such scheme requires additional use of time and resources that can prove expensive in terms of time, effort and resources to an organization. So it is actually one way it is a burden to the company, but you have a moral responsibility to undertake that. Otherwise, it is a sustainable development. This will be effective. Therefore, you have to, even though you have to spend the time and resources, you have to undertake such things. Then training costs. So when you are doing environment management, you will be not able to achieve that without providing training for the whole the people, your employees and managers and high grade people, as well as to the general public. So everybody in this process that will need recruiting human resources for all these stages. So we have to recruit this human resources for all these stages. An organization has to offer training. You have to recruit the people for the management, and as well as you have to train the people. So recruits have to be trained. And if it want to implement an effective system, and this can be proved expensive and troublesome to management. Therefore, this is actually clearly for the company, this environment management system has to be maintained with all the troubles. So now we will learn about the environment management system. The environment management system is a set of process and practices that enable an organization to reduce the environment impact and increase the operating efficiency. The site provides information and resources related to an EMS for small business and private industry, as well as local, state or provincial agencies. Actually, we have to consider about what is an EMS, cost and benefit of EMS, and the International Organization for Standardization of the Standardization 14,001. So, EMS is an environment management system. Is a framework that helps an organization to achieve its environmental goals through the consistent review, evaluation, and improvement of its environmental performance. So you know this in Sri Lanka, that there are a lot of number of acts, environment acts, and the various acts are there in force. So according to that, you have to do the environment management. Therefore, it is a framework that is to achieve the goals according to the existing legal acts and regulations. The assumption is that this consistent review and evaluation will identify opportunities for improving and implementing the environmental performance of the organization. So therefore, the environmental EMS is now it consisted always review and evaluation, continuous review and evaluation, because first instance you will be earmark or fix the certain steps, and then during the implementation you will find out mistakes. So it is a continuously you have to evaluate, review your program and evaluate. So how you going to achieve the best environment practices for your industry, for your construction site, for your other things. So therefore, the when you are doing some construction or doing the production, your company or industry, then government, valid, all the act and ordinance are monitoring your outcomes. Yeah, environmentally, what are the effluent level and everything. If you are issuing releasing the wastewater, what is the requirement for the water level quality, all those things. The EMS itself does not dictate the level of environmental performance that must be achieved. So, environment management system does not dictate the level of environment performance, what is the requirement, but must be achieved. Each organization EMS is tailored with its own individual objective and targets. So it is coming behind individual objective target. Therefore, continuous evaluation and monitoring will help to improve your EMS. That is the main requirement. Then basis of the EMS is an EMS help an organization address its regulatory requirement in a systematic and cost-effective manner. This proactive approach can help reduce the risk of non-compliance and improve health and safety practices for employees and the public. So most very important that safety practice, so health and safety practice for the employees and public. And EMS can also help address non-regulated issues such as energy conservation, and can promote stronger operational control and employees stewardship. Basic elements of EMS include the following. What are that? Reviewing the organization environment goals, then analyzing its environmental impact and compliance obligations for legal and other requirements, then setting environment objectives and targets to reduce environmental impact and conform with compliance obligations. Establishing programs to meet the objectives and targets. So, monitoring and measuring progress in achieving the objectives. Ensuring employees' environmental awareness and the competence. Reviewing the progress of the EMS and achieving the improvement. Therefore, it is a continuous, as I mentioned, continuous process, reviewing and monitoring. So not only your process, but it is ensure the employees' environment awareness. All the employees must be has a responsibility. We have to educate them. We have to give the awareness, and they should be competent enough to achieve their targets. So those very responsible manner we have to make in environment management system. So it is basically environmental management system is include analyzing its environmental impact and compliance obligation, legal or other requirement. The legals are already defined in our Environmental Act and other relevant acts I mentioned earlier, and setting environment objectives and targets to reduce the environmental impact and conform with the compliance obligation. So various levels you have for your obligation. Establishing programs to meet these objectives and targets. Monitoring and measuring progress in achieving the objectives. Ensuring employees, as I mentioned, awareness and competence. Reviewing progress of EMS and change that. So then, cost and benefit of the EMS. Internal cost, staff, manager time, represent the bulk of EMS resources expended by most organizations. Other employees' time. So time is internal staff management, staff and manager time. Represent the bulk of EMS resources expanded by most organizations and other employees' time. Then external potential consulting assistant. So outside training of personnel. So then even the externally these things so sometimes you may be not able to solve your problems in your company with the when you are identified during the EMS environmental system, then you will have to get the external consultant to potential consulting assistant from the external. So because the experts are there, you have to hire the experts to regulate or rectify your problems within the institution. And outside training of person. So your employees and managers and others has to be trained in outside also, because the inside awareness is not sufficient. So you have to give the outside training also. Then potential benefits are improve the environment performance. So once you have well set for the environment management system, it is improve the environment performance. So you will not get into trouble. Otherwise, the monitoring agencies, maybe Labour Ministry, maybe Environment Authority, maybe monitor your performance and you will be in trouble. Therefore, improve the environment performance. Then enhance compliance and pollution prevention. So you have to enhance compliance. So you will be achieve the what are the provisions in the various act. In the meantime, pollution prevention. Pollution is preventing. So your wastewater will be purified to acceptable level, and like that groundwater pollution is has to be prevented. So that's the way in the industry. In the even construction industry also, construction sites also, same thing has to be followed. Then resource conservation. So your resources will be conserved when you are doing the good environment management system. New customers and market. So your product, when you are doing the very good environment management system, you will get the more what you call new customers and markets. Increase the efficiency, reduce the cost. So when you do the environment management system efficiently, you are continuously reviewing and monitoring, and then you are arresting your shortfall, then increase the efficiency and reduce your product and cost for the industry. Enhance employee morale. So then the employees also very enthusiastic about your performance, and then it has enhanced the employees' morale also. Enhance image with public, regulators, lenders and investors. Then what will be then that all the public, they are also vigilant what you are doing in your industry and how you pollute the what you call damaging the environment. Therefore, when you are doing the very concrete proposals for environmental management system, the public will be happy, and regulators like Environment Authority and like that various regulating authorities are there. So lenders, those who are giving the money for your industry, and investors, see, everybody will be happy because of your good performance. So employees awareness. So actually, this line your employees has give the good awareness then about your environment issues. So then it will be very helpful to your company, your industry. So regarding this, the EMS Environment Management System under ISO 14001, the most commonly used framework for EMS is the one developed by International Organization for Standardization ISO 14001. Standard exists. Established in 1996, the framework is official international standard for an EMS, which is based on the plan, do, check, act methodology. So that is what we have: continuous evaluation, monitoring, evaluation, and arresting. So plan, do, check, and act methodology. The five main stages of the EMS as defined in the ISO 14000 standard are described below. Just to your knowledge: commitment and policy. Top management commit to environmental improvements and establish the organization environmental policy. The policy is the foundation for the EMS. So actually for everything, the higher management have the responsibility, and they have to improve the organization environment policy. Based on the policy, we have to prepare the foundation. It is the foundation for the EMS. Then it will be successful. Then planning. An organization first identify the environmental aspects of its operations. And environmental aspects are those items such as air pollutant, hazardous waste that can have negative impact on people and of the environment. An organization then determine which aspects are significantly by choosing criteria considered most important by the object. For example, an organization may choose worker health and safety, environmental compliance, and cost as its criteria. Once the significant improvement aspects are determined, an organization set objectives and targets. An objective is on overall environmental goals. That means minimize the use of chemical X. Target is detailed. Quantities quantified requirement that arise from the objective. That means they reduce the use of chemical X by 25% by September 2016. For example, the final part of the planning stage is devising an action plan for meeting the target. This includes the designing responsibilities, establishing schedule, and outlining the clearly defined steps to meet the implementation. An organization follow through with the action plan using the necessary resources, human, financial, etc. An important component is employees training and awareness for the all employees, including the interns, contractors, etc. Even contractors also has to give the training. Other steps in the implementation stage include documentation, following operating procedure, and setting up internal and external communication lines. So those are the implementation, including evaluation. Company monitor its operations to evaluate whether objectives and targets are being met. If not, the company takes corrective action. So evaluation, once you evaluation, you have to say, after evaluation, your company must monitor its operation and evaluate whether objectives or targets are being met. Otherwise, you have to rectify that, taking the corrective action. Then finally, review. Top management review the results of the evaluation of see if the EMS is working. So, environmental management system is working. The top management has to be evaluate whether it is working. Management determine whether the original environmental policy is consistent with the original organization values. The plan is then revised to optimize the effectiveness of the EMS. The review stage is create a loop continuous improvement for the company. So therefore, those things has to be. This is the briefly 14,001 contain. So that's not only we already discussed about the EMS. So therefore now we are going to discuss about the application of the EMS for the various institutions. The environmental management system is a primary responsibility of the government institution, private institutions like bank and corporations and public companies as well as private companies. Therefore, it is very important for engineers to have the idea about the EMS in your institution. It is mainly the proper on training establishing EMS should be given to all relevant employees of the government sector institutions, and full knowledge about ISO 14001, including how to set up an environmental policy and its achievement under ISO 14001 model. Actually, it is a integrated approach in your institutions or corporation or company, how you are going to contribute to protect the environment of the country as a whole world, that under EMS system. So prime objective is that get the benefit to the next generation. Therefore, all the employees of the institution should be aware about what is you are going to do under 14001 under EMS. When planning environment policy, necessary components should be included, such as prevention of various types of pollution, compliance with relevant laws and regulations, continual improvements, etc., and it should be published to relevant all internal and outside people. So I think quite understand that we are going to prevent the various type of pollutions and compliance with the relevant laws. Environment laws, their local authority government, local authority government bylaws are there, so and regulations there. So all those things has to be improved continuously, and it should be published to relevant all internal and outside people. These things should be given to the awareness to the internal employees as well as the outside people. Otherwise, that may be not successful your effort to establish the environment management system. Proper environmental task group should be created to include the various positions of the organization structure of institution. So therefore, now various people in your institution should be entrusted with the proper responsibility in the various level and various positions in your organization to attend this EMS program. Continuous audit and review on implementation of its EMS should be done periodically at the proper time. So as other things also, continuous audit, it's checking and balances and review the implementation of the EMS. How your program is work should be periodically monitored and audited and review. So if there is any lapses, that should be rectified. Establishing a post environmental officer for each institution should be done to coordinate all the environmental programs. So therefore, it is essential this responsibility entrusted with the responsible officer. Therefore, it is normally required to establish a post, maybe the EMS manager or something like that, environment officer for each institution to look into these matters. The attitude of the employee be improved to protect and conserve the environment of the while considering it a part of its duty of the bearing post. So therefore, the attitudes of the employees should be improved. So they should be give the awareness as well as knowledge and difficulties and how it affects the future generation. if you are polluting the environment and not practicing the regulations and rules and regulations of the government. So therefore, it is better to give the all the people awareness in addition to their post. So even in your family also, now you have to give the awareness to your wife as well as the family members, your son, daughters, and children, how you should protect the environment. That means for the regarding the waste material, how you are identify the waste material and put it separately in the bins, and like all those degradable items like organic matters and plastics and other things, papers like that separately. So normally then now the local government are collecting the all the things separately, so plastic separately once or two times per month, and then the paper wastages once a month, and uh, this organic material regarding the organic material once in 2 days, like that. So therefore it is the most important attitude of the members of the institution, corporation, family should be improved. Special attention to be paid for integrated water management, solid waste management. Actually, water is the main polluter. It is very badly affecting by the by the solid waste. Therefore, is special attention to paid the integrated water management and solid waste management. So this is the very important for the institution. Even the integrated water management is include the household, reduce your water usage in your house, and in the wastewater, it should try to prevent the what to call this, the use water when you enter the when it enter your main drain uh, without the solid waste as well as the uh, without chemicals like that. So you have to uh, as far as possible you must give the your attention to uh, release the your wastewater to the main drain without any hazard material. So then environment strategies that can be adopted by the local bank also. This is applicable to government institutions also. Energy saving through the exploring energy efficient lighting solutions and alternative energy sources. So now this energy in part and parcel of the environmental. So then you are using more energy. That means wasting more fuel and using more water for the hydropower, like that. Therefore, energy saving through the exploring energy. So in your institution, you must what to call this? You must implement the energy saving process. So steps should be taken. Even house also, that unwanted light should be switch off, and all those things. Not necessary to explain. Reducing the paper waste through proper consumption and promoting recycling when possible and practical. Actually, this paper wasting is waste is the most important, because paper means paper wasting means that you are cutting the more trees. Therefore, that now most of the institution they actually reduce the paper using for the various things. Even the telecom now they are trying to send all the bills to the email. Then the papers could be cut down. That even banks also they are normally using the SMS to inform the your information, and various applications are there. So therefore, that they are producing. So any institution it should be done. Then the carbon footprint, the amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere as a result of the activities of the particular individual, organization, and community. So this is it is to get to understand the amount of carbon dioxide released to the atmosphere as a result of the activities of the particular individual, organization, community. So these things, this calculation process to track our performance and benchmark of our progress against our peers in the industry. Therefore, should all the employees should be what to call this, aware about the carbon footprint also. Sustainable lending of green loans such as lending non-conventional renewable energy sector and green energy loan schemes for the individuals. So therefore, normally this rooftop solar power uh, system is one of the best thing to control the energy, and it is environment friendly. Therefore, I think as a bank they can promote in their business, they can give them more support to the solar energy panels and other system to install in the rooftop. So I think nowadays we are very badly affected by the power cut. So therefore, it is all the people are agitating to institute the solar power. So therefore, this bank can do that for the what to call this, encouraging the general public with the concession rate interest, so they can give the loan to encourage the people. Engaging customers through enabling them to mitigate towards more eco-friendly business practices. So the customers of the bank can be encouraged to mitigate towards the eco-friendly, environment friendly, economical friendly business practices. Environment of CSR. What is the CSR? CSR is a corporate so, corporate environment, environment of CSR project to identify the address official ecology challenges that are likely to cause the destruction for the natural composition of air, water on the earth. So normally this CSR is the policies, uh, policies and practices undertaken by the corporate intended to a positive influence of the world. So most of the companies are doing the corporate social responsibility in the practice of the practices, and their policies are framing undertaken by the corporate social responsibility to have the intended to have a positive influence on the world. Then social strategy adopted the bank further discussing adopting the 360-degree sustainability matrix that begins with the stakeholders engagement mechanism where key sustainable trends and identified while opportunities and threats arising therefore are determined. In the meantime, using the social responsibility, society responsive CSR, cooperative social responsibility model that address the broader systematic issues and socio-economic challenges that affect communities. The bank is guided by the Millennium Development Goals and 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, both parts of the UNDP Development Roadmap of Sri Lanka. So actually, United Nations Development Program is always insisting to implement those things, corporate social responsibility and other things. So uh, Millennium Development Goals, it is equal this CSR, corporate social responsibility programs. The bank aims to bring about positive changes across the broader community demographics through the social responsive CSR model. So therefore, actually, from all these things, the banks can encourage the people to
through their CSR, community social, corporate social responsibility. They can improve the attitudes of people to protect the environment. Transparency and good governance, community engagement, and employees volunteerism. So these all the programs should have the transparency, and good governance, යහපාලනය, and විනිවිදභාවය, engagement, and employees the volunteerism. This volunteerism means that means everybody is by not by payment but voluntarily. They are responsible to contribute the social development. Then when you doing this, it is actually integrated approach for the water management, solid waste management is more essential, because in the world everywhere we are discussing about the integrated approach for the water management as well as solid waste management. Then now actually everything is integrated approach, mainly because of the two always doing the things with the stakeholders. Pollution water as well as disposal solid waste affecting the environment very seriously. I think everybody knows that. Today most countries are facing unprecedented pressure on water resources. So it is the, this all the countries, they are actually making pressures on water resources development to protect the water resources. The global population is growing fast and estimated the world will face 40% shortfall between the forecast demand and available water by 2030. So 2030 actually only 40% short, but only 60% will be utilized. Therefore, available supply of water is in 2030 is already forecast that shortage of 40% of water for human use. So climate change, flood damages, droughts pose the fact matter of these resources also consider water security. So now this, because climate change is very badly affecting sometimes very heavy rains, then flood damages, and droughts for the long period. Those things have been very badly affected our water resources. Therefore, advanced integrated water resource management promote the coordinated development and management of water, land, and related resources, like in order to maximize economics and social welfare, even agriculture development, in an equitable manner without compromising sustainability vital ecosystem. So therefore, this now integrated water management is with the effort of all the institutions related to water as well as the general community and stakeholders. So everybody is coordinated, because everybody should know what is doing the other agency. So this is actually, I think, when you read the integrated water resources management principle, you can understand. Then the solid waste management also, now all the government institutions, town councils, in the Pradeshi Sabha, all those things are now actually paid more attention for the solid waste management, or it is also integrated, because it is the the responsibility of the one or single person. Is the whole community is responsible for solid waste management. Actually entering the solid waste to the water bodies is making the badly the what to call this source environment pollution. So urbanization and rapid population growth have increased the quantity and complexity of the waste generated. So quite understand that mainly because of the urbanization and population growth, that quantity of the waste generated by solid waste is increased. Therefore, now we have to give the integrated manage it. 3D this those things are very important, and people have to participate to curtail the or minimize the solid waste. Inefficient management or improper disposal of solid waste has created negative impacts sustainability of the environment. Therefore, inefficient management. So Actually, human made these problems. Therefore, insufficient management improvement actually will badly affect the sustainable environment. I think day-to-day papers you can read how people are wasting the material and how they are polluting the water. Therefore, the integrated way the participation of all the communities as well as the people and families is the most important for sustainable management solid waste. Therefore, finding an integrated and holistic approach to managing solid waste in an environmentally, socially, financially, and economically feasible manner is essential. So, quite understand it is the responsibility of the people. The EMS should take these important aspects positively. So, when you implement the environmental management system in your office, these things also should be considered. Thank you very much. I don't want to elaborate further. This is the uh, what I can say about environmental system management.